Hello and welcome to Pint Glass Gaming. My name's Gary, and I'm here with my best friend Daniel
Hello.
to talk with you about some retro video games. Daniel, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself and what your gaming pedigree is?
Well, my very first gaming system was the original Nintendo Entertainment System, and my first game was Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt, the combo cartridge that people know and love. From there, we got a Sega Genesis, then an N64, then a GameCube, then a PlayStation 2, and then once I could finally afford my own consoles, a 360 and a PS3, and then a PS4, and nowadays I pretty much just play PC all the time. Add to that the ungodly amount of handhelds we had. If there was a version of the Game Boy or DS, it was in our household, thanks to my younger brother, who had to have every single type.
Shout out to Alex. Gary here, my gaming pedigree. I have over 40 unique video game consoles, the first of which from 1989 was our Nintendo Entertainment System. My sister's godfather bought it for her, and I have stolen it, and she will never get it back.
Never.
Gaming is an absolute passion of mine. It's more than just a hobby, and I'm excited to be able to talk with my best friend about it, and hopefully we can get people to listen. What are we going to be talking about today?
Well, today on this very first episode, we will be talking about the 1996 PlayStation 1 survival horror classic,
Resident Evil.
Now that that's out of the way, let's hear that kickin' theme song.
Game overview and facts.
So, the first thing we will do is provide an historical overview about the game and the series itself. So, Gary, what do we know about Resident Evil?
Resident Evil was released in 1996 on the original PlayStation. It was subsequently released on the Sega Saturn, Windows PC, and Nintendo DS. It holds a 91 Metacritic score with a 9.3 user score, which means it's gotten basically universal acclaim. A director's cut was released in 1997, and that was the first game that I owned on the original PlayStation. So, Daniel, what's your personal history with this game?
Well, my personal history was playing the director's cut with you. That was my very first recollection of Resident Evil to begin with. I was always more of a Resident Evil 2 kind of kid because that was the only one available for the Nintendo 64. But finally, after years of procrastinating on playing this one, I actually played through the DS version, Deadly Silence. So that was sort of my defining version for the original Resident Evil.
So, as I said, it was my first game on the PS1. Now, full transparency, and I don't feel like I can lie to our listeners. This game is what started me on my Codebreaker / Game Shark addiction. I could not play this game without cheating, especially when I was a wee lad.
Yeah, to be fair, though, anyone around our age or our generation, if you tried to claim that you never played any games without a Game Genie or Game Shark or an Action Replay, you are a freaking liar.
I would
sit
definitely
on a throne of lies, and you will not survive the winter, and so on and so forth.
So in 1997, you got to figure I was going to be in the 6th grade. Give a 6th grader infinite ammo with the Magnum in this game, where heads just blow up. Anytime you use it, no one's going to say no to that. I'm sorry. They're not going to do it.
I love the sound it would make.
Here's a sample of that sound right now. So that's a basic overview of the game and a little bit of our history with it. Let's talk quickly about the storyline.
Storyline.
The storyline is an elite unit of police in the fictional town of Raccoon City, the STARS unit, or Special Tactics and Rescue Service, are sent in to investigate a series of grisly murders and disappearances near a mansion called Arclay Mansion. The Alpha team of this STARS unit is sent in to find out what happened to the disappeared Bravo team.
Have you ever seen the Monty Python sketch where they're going mountaineering, and they say the purpose of this year's expedition is to find any trace of last year's expedition.
Basically, that's
Same
pretty much
idea.
what we're talking about here. And funny you mentioned Monty Python. We're dealing with about the same level of of acting, I would say. Not to say the Monty Python guys are bad actors. It's just it was more amusing than dramatic.
All of the cutscenes are acted with live, real people who don't act like real people, quite frankly.
If I recall, some of them barely even spoke English.
Definitely not their first language, especially Jill. We're going to have some samples of that later. So the Alpha team finds Bravo team's downed helicopter. And as they're walking through the weeds that are around this, they discover a grisly sight. The helicopter's empty, and they pull a hand that is still clutching a firearm. This part is what is always funny to me. So they are then attacked by a pack of mutant dogs. And the footage, it's just hysterical. It's a picture, a still picture of a dog's snout that they pan the camera around and add some grunting sounds to. So they start shooting at these dogs, and for whatever reason, the helicopter that they came in on themselves pulls away, and the dogs stop attacking just long enough for the Stars Alpha team to look pensively away and say, "No, don't go."
Don't go!
And then they attack again. But there's a pause. It was very nice of those dogs to give that pause.
Look, hey, the dogs were the best actors there. They understood dramatic effect.
Members of their team get eaten. Now, in the director's cut, in other regions, this scene was expanded. It was much gorier. You see a guy basically get tore up. But in 1997, the Joe Liebermans of the world thought that we were not mature enough to handle that.
Our sensitive minds were just so they had to be preserved from such debauchery and such horror.
I don't know what I would have done.
I know.
I had seen that. So they run to this mansion in the hills in the background, and the first scene is the door opening, and depending on whose campaign you used, determines which characters are in the foyer.
Yes, there are two different playable characters in this game. Jill Valentine and Chris Redfield. Now, there are some slight differences between them. Jill Valentine couldn't take as much damage, not as strong, but for some reason had 2 extra inventory slots in this game. Because inventory and its management is a big part of this game, which was one of the codifiers of the genre we all know nowadays as survival horror.
Now, keep in mind that the character model for Jill doesn't have any extra pockets or any extra bags, so we can only assume where she's hiding the extra items.
I don't want to think about where she's hiding those. Why would
we
you
know.
even why would you even suggest that? What is wrong with you?
You thought it. Anyway. So
Hiding things under her hat? What is wrong with you? That is man, you're weird.
I'm twisted. So Jill's counterpart is Barry Burton, who, when they walk into the mansion, lets out this gem of a voice line.
What is this?
Yeah. So that's the other thing. This game is not known for virtuoso acting, especially when it comes to the voice acting. It's kind of a meme at this point.
There are
it
so
is a meme
many,
at this point.
Yeah, definitely. And there are so many quotable lines, but for all the wrong reasons.
Hashtag Jill sandwich.
We'll get to that in a moment. So Jill and Barry go to investigate some gunshots that they hear, leaving their captain, Wesker, who is totally not a brooding villain, in the foyer.
Come on, the sunglasses. Come on. What kind of villain would wear sunglasses that stylish? I mean,
I never suspected him.
No.
There's only 3 people that you meet, and there's a traitor amongst you. Narrows it down. They go to investigate this gunshot. Barry becomes fixated on a puddle of blood that's on the floor in a dining room.
He hopes it's not Chris's blood.
That's right. He hopes, and he says, I'm going to look at this. That gunshot we just heard, Jill, don't worry about it. You go look at it. I'm just going to look at this blood. Barry's a fucking coward.
It's like that book, Identifying Wood Samples. Yep, it's wood.
That's wood.
Yep, it's blood.
So while he stares at the blood, Jill goes to check it out and finds, well, their old buddy Kenneth from the Bravo team getting munched on by an undead zombie.
Nom 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 nom.
Now, you can stand there and be a fool and shoot that zombie, but it's a waste of ammunition, because if you run back into the dining room, Barry, who wasn't really interested in meeting it, will shoot it dead.
Because in this game, NPCs have infinite ammo.
Wesker, the captain who is in the foyer, is missing mysteriously, and you guys decide that you have to find a way out of this mansion, and that sets up basically the Jill campaign. Let's talk a little bit about the gameplay.
Gameplay.
So this, as I said, is one of the codifiers for the genre we know as survival horror. And in it, it was kind of a revolutionary thing. Independent 3D models running around pre-rendered backgrounds that would shift just from background to background, still image to still image as you move the character. Now, you could probably think that a problem starts to arise because every time the camera reorients itself to a new background, you're going to be facing in a completely different direction. So if you're just using regular, joystick movement that we know today, where one direction moves you in a specific direction, you might have a problem. You might keep bouncing around. So this game has the infamous tank controls. How this works is pressing forward on the joystick will move your character forward in whatever direction they're facing. Pressing back will make them back up in whatever direction they're facing. And left or right will rotate the character. So no matter where you are facing, forward on the control stick will move them forward in whatever direction the 3D model is facing. So you can keep holding forward and you'll go from background to background, no sweat.
The first 3 games in the series are notorious for these controls. I'm not sure why people hate them so much, because they're perfectly functional. Do you run into the wall every so often? Yeah, but luckily you don't get stuck. You kind of just slide down the wall like you were greased up.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you can, jiggle, keep jiggling forward on the control stick, and you look like you're skating. Come on, it's beautiful.
Tapping the square button was always fun for me, because you run at the same exact speed, but it cuts the animation in half, so it looks like you're like hopping on one leg almost as you walk down the hall. Now, later games in the series added a quick turnaround function, but that is not present in this game. Would have been really helpful.
That would have. So quick turnaround if you're because there is a run button. Pressing forward will just make you walk. Holding down the run button will make you run, obviously. The quick turnaround is if you press back on the control stick and run at the same time, you'll immediately do a 180, which, yes, quite useful in future iterations. But this was basically the prototype for what they were going for here. So there's a lot of quality of life improvements that were yet to be implemented.
Now, as we were talking about earlier with your 2 playable characters, Jill Valentine is basically your easy mode, and Chris Redfield is your hard mode. Jill is helped out at pretty much every juncture of this game by Barry. You're going to get into some stuff, and Barry's going to swoop in and save you with his strong, hairy arms. Like in this instance, for example, with the infamous line, "You were almost a Jill sandwich." Let's hear that real quick.
Oh, Barry!
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right.
Barry's always going to be there, for better or worse, but Jill herself, as a character, is smart. She can read music. There's a part in the game where you have to play a version of the Moonlight Sonata in order for a door to open, and Jill can do that because Jill is capable, Jill is competent, Jill comes prepared. She has extra inventory slots because she is a good cop.
She also has lockpicks because she's the master of unlocking.
Chris, on the other hand, Chris Redfield. Now, Chris is a legend in this series. I'm going to piss people off right now, Daniel. I'm going to be real. It's time to get real. Chris Redfield is a fucking simpleton.
No arguments there for me.
Let's go through this. In the first section of this game, Chris shows up without a weapon. So either he didn't bring one in the first place, or he dropped it while he was running away from the dogs. Now, could you imagine You're a police officer. Oh, sorry, Chief. I dropped my gun. Wouldn't work out very well.
I can imagine not.
Jill Jill comes with her 8 inventory slots because Chris is incompetent and does not come prepared. Only comes with his 6. There are several instances where him being a simpleton is basically blatantly pointed out. You try and play music just like you did when you were playing the Jill campaign, and right on the screen, unfortunately, Chris can't read music. So his compatriot, Rebecca, shows up. And Rebecca, let me tell you, Rebecca is one of the most annoying characters in the history of video games. I mean, the first time you meet her, she lets out this gem.
What? Oh! Oh no!
Rebecca is one of the worst characters. Chris is dumb. There's another section in the game where you're fighting a giant plant. Now, Jill can mix chemicals to kill this plant. You don't even have the option with Chris. Chris just walks in and the plant just, ganks him. And you have to once again have Rebecca come and mix the chemicals to poison plant 42. Chris is dumb.
I mean, even one of us could figure out, oh, hey, these are toxic chemicals. Oh, hey, this is the water supply going to this plant. Maybe these toxic chemicals will kill it.
And, that's I know that there's got to be some sort of suspension of disbelief when you're playing a video game with puzzles, but I bet you if you just mixed any of those chemicals, you could kill a plant. You could poison a plant. Just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks.
Does it say acid on it? Does it say strong base on it? Does it say corrosive on it? Go for it. Why not?
Jill's campaign, if you're a first-time player, it's the obvious place to start. More inventory slots, more help along the way, lock picks, you don't need as many keys. It's the obvious way to go. I enjoy Jill's campaign. I'm lukewarm on Chris's.
You get no arguments from me there. Playing both of them on the DS remake, basically the same arguments. It's more convoluted. It just feels like more roadblocks are in the way for no particular reason on Chris's campaign.
Jill has better weapons. I'll make that argument any day. I would rather have the bazooka any day of the week than Chris's flamethrower. Just better overall. If you want to play only one of these campaigns, because let's be honest, the storyline is pretty much the same throughout, you're going to want to play with Jill.
Unless you're a masochist, then please, by all means, play as Chris.
Gameplay-wise, ammo is scarce throughout the entire game. You can't just go in willy-nilly Clint Eastwood style and ask zombies if they're feeling lucky. Everything is scarce. Health items. So
you can't really ask them anything because they're responsible.
Either way, you got to save those shots. Oh, that moan too. We got to play the moan. This is one of the hardest video game sound effects to explain to someone in another room. What? Imagine this. It's 1997. Violent video games are kind of a new thing. Horror video games are new. This is one of the games that pioneered the genre. It was based on a game called Alone in the Dark, which very few people have played in my experience. This is one of the games that started horror video games. And just imagine your parents in the other room, you're playing this, and they hear this. Good luck explaining that one to mom. That your control is getting taken away, buddy. It's over.
Yeah, that PlayStation's going in a locked box somewhere. You're getting grounded.
It was usually because of my math grades at that point in time. My Resident Evil got taken away because of bad math grades. Sheldon Polner was my math teacher. Man, fuck you, Sheldon.
No, to be fair, I did get to play Conker's Bad Fur Day when I was 13, so,
Very, very understanding parents we had, and then you let me borrow it afterwards, and
yes.
I loved every minute of it. We got to talk about that game someday.
Somehow we turned out okay. Somehow.
My taxidermy squirrel collection's none of your business.
Hey, they are very nice squirrels. Unfortunately, they still only talk to me. This game actually kind of codified a formula for the rest of the tank control style Resident Evil games from here on. You would start basically with a pistol and nothing else. You'd solve a few simple puzzles within either a mansion or something a bit more mundane. In Resident Evil 2, it was a police station. In Resident Evil 3, it was the streets of Raccoon City itself. But then, after some sort of halfway point, you get an encounter with one of the final bosses, and then you start segueing into a secret lab, because there's always a secret lab in these games.
There's gotta be when you're dealing with an evil pharmaceutical company, the likes of which few have seen.
Yes.
Let's talk quickly about the bosses. Now, one thing that I love about the Resident Evil franchise is that they take basically everything that makes people uncomfortable and they throw it in a game. Let's look at the enemies in this. Zombies, no brainer.
Like,
Giant
yeah.
spiders, that's my Achilles heel right there. I will
Yeah.
burn your house down if I see a spider wander into it. I don't
Yeah.
know how Australians live knowing that there's huntsmen out there. I digress.
Hey, huntsman spiders are actually, like, they're not really...
Fire.
Okay.
I ain't dealing with that. And they jump. Or camel spiders. I don't want to get started. Spiders. Man-eating plants. Giant sharks.
Giant snakes.
Whatever the hell the hunter is.
Whatever the hell the lickers are in RE2.
We're not there yet, though. And then the Chimera. They're basically human bug hybrids. This game had everything that would make you uncomfortable, and in a level of realism that we could not have experienced before.
Yeah, you might look at this game nowadays and think it looks absolutely atrocious, but for its time, this was revolutionary.
One thing that I think you're going to hear me say a lot as we go through this podcast is that you can't look at these games through the modern lens. You can't treat them that way. You've got to think, what would Gary in 1997 have thought of this game? It's important because it's hard to say something holds up, especially this first generation of 3D games. We were just feeling our way around. Developers didn't really know how to make 3D games yet. They were making it up as they went along. So keep that in mind, folks. Just be nice to your retro games.
Although, now that you do say it, there are multiple different versions of this game, and each one actually steadily improved on each other as they went along. So right after the original, we got the director's cut. And the director's cut had, the gorier cutscenes. I believe the version for PC actually had all those cutscenes in full color, because the original version only had them in black and white. We had the infamous, at this point, director's cut DualShock edition, which, for those of you who don't know, partway into the lifespan of the PlayStation 1, they introduced the DualShock controller, which was the controller that actually had the joysticks, which codified the PlayStation controller format.
And it also was an answer to the N64 Rumble Pack because it vibrated.
Yes, that too. And it was infamous because of its music. Now, it integrated a full orchestral score instead of the, I think it was some sort of MIDI music for the original. But something must have gotten screwed up in translation, because there are some really bad musical tracks in this. And we'll play one for you right here, right now. The most infamous one.
Gotta tell you, Daniel, this sounds like a clown stuck one of those elementary school recorders up his ass.
Funny tangent there, though. If I recall, the composer for this game, I don't remember his name, but I think he was outed as actually being a fraud. Like, he didn't actually make his own music, and for all this time, he was actually faking being deaf. So this was like some sort of deaf prodigy, like the Japanese Beethoven or something like that. And it turns out, no, he was just a full-on fraud.
I've never heard that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I believe that's true. But I found out someone actually took the raw MIDI track for that song song we just played for you, and switched around the instruments. And we'll play that for you right here. Now, if you notice, that sounds completely different and actually sounds like it belongs in a Resident Evil game. So there must have been something lost in translation here. And this guy probably, I'll bet you this guy was cringing his face inside out when he heard these tracks, but couldn't say anything because he was pretending he was deaf.
Kind of makes a convenient excuse for why your work was so terrible, though.
And
Maybe
there
I'll
you
try
go.
that at work.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm sorry, I'm deaf.
No
Then I'll tell
habla
them about my
inglés.
podcast. The sound, honestly, the score in these games, Dual Shock notwithstanding, is awesome, and it really does set the tone. There are some really tense. I know that there's one area called the dormitory, and the music there always so creepy.
And even one of my favorites is actually the save room music, because it always gives you this, like, it's sort of a cross between something relaxing and something sort of, somber. It's a score that gives you the feeling that you're in a safe place, but you can't be in there forever. Like, the horror is waiting outside, and it's only a
The
matter of
save
time.
room tracks are always awesome. Resident Evil 2, I think, has a better one. We'll talk about Resident Evil 2 on another day. I agree. It just sets the tone where you feel safe, but you know that there's a rising tension as soon as you leave.
Yep. Moving on with the other versions of this game, there was a Game Boy Color version, which we're not going to talk about because not really worth talking about.
It wasn't released though, was it?
Oh yeah, it might not have been.
It's definitely playable. I have played it on emulation. It's not finished though. I think you can get up to a certain point, and damage doesn't really do anything. You have infinite ammo for anything you find, but the problem with it is that you have to be like pixel perfect on picking up things. If you're not on the like exact pixel on the Game Boy that you need to be, you're just going to walk past it. So like I think you can only play as Chris. So you have to pick up Jill's gun in the foyer, and it took me 20 minutes.
Wow. See, that's the real puzzle right there.
Achievement unlocked. Picked up gun.
Yeah. Probably the two, I would say, the two best iterations beyond the original. One, the remake for the Nintendo GameCube, which was a massive improvement, and Resident Evil Deadly Silence, the one I remember playing the most, the DS version. Why don't you tell them a bit about the GameCube version?
Well, the GameCube version that came out in, was that 2006? I want to say.
If I recall,
it is an improvement in every metric. The graphics are absolutely phenomenal. They hold up 100% to this day.
Oh, it was 2002.
2002? Okay, way off. So 2002, which was my sophomore year of high school. It was an exclusive for the GameCube for a while. And if you have it like I do, it says only on Nintendo GameCube right on the box. That's a lie.
Well, yeah, because a little over a decade later, they re-released it for the PC, PS3, PS4, Xbox 360.
You can play it on any modern console at this point. It is absolutely fantastic. They took everything that you loved about the first game and just built on it. It has all the bosses and all the creatures that you loved from the hunters down. Plus, it adds one extra phenomenal boss as well as a different type of zombie. Daniel, opinion on Crimson Heads?
Oh, God. Most annoying enemy ever. Like, it was a great idea, but oh, God, I hated dealing with them.
They're tough. They're bullet sponges, and they do a crazy amount of damage, and they're fast. And the thing is this is a remake, so you kind of expect to know everything going into it, and then this thing stands up in the most like unusual fashion. It's just totally unnatural the way that it snaps into an upright position, almost like a tripod.
Yeah,
just props up, and you're like, "What the fuck is that?"
Yeah, I really appreciate remakes that stay mostly true to the original, but give you just enough variation to throw, just to keep things interesting. to keep you engaged, and that is probably one of the most perfect ways to do it. Because you could actually alleviate the problem by disposing of the zombie bodies before they turned into crimson heads. You had to burn them, though unfortunately the material you used to burn them was in limited supply, just like every other piece of ammo.
So you
Once
have to be
again, yeah.
selective about
Yep.
which ones you're going to burn. If you have a zombie that you killed in a very narrow hallway, that's the one you dispose of, not the ones that are in more wide open areas that you could probably run around. It's a whole different element of strategy that wasn't present in the original game, but was fantastic. Awesome, awesome touch.
And then in 2006, Resident Evil Deadly Silence. Now, this one's a bit odd. I don't remember it getting great reviews, but personally, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It had both an authentic, like plain old, just singular Resident Evil Director's Cut version of it, which still utilized some of the benefits of the Nintendo DS, because the dual screen on the bottom screen with the touch screen was where the regular gameplay happened, but on the top screen was the map. So you could always see the map at all times. And I have to admit, that was really nice, even playing like original mode. But it also had something called Rebirth mode that added in some extra puzzles and a little extra quirks exclusive to the Nintendo DS. One of my favorites actually was, at random times, if you went into a room, you'd go into first person perspective with your knife, and you could actually tap to stab, or swipe across the screen with the stylus to slash, and you actually had to fight off some zombies or some dogs or possibly even the occasional hunter. And if you did well enough, you could do like an active counter thing. You could slash and stab. If you did well enough, it actually rewarded you with some ammo or even an herb from time to time.
Now, I've never played Deadly Silence, but you mentioned the hunters, and we haven't spoken about them yet.
That
first
was
time-
another one. Yeah. That
First time
cutscene,
you
right?
see it, now you come back into the mansion. You went out like through the back door, and you're coming back in, and all of a sudden you see some sort of creature following the same path you just took. You're in this creature's perspective, and you see this scaly green arm opening doors, and the thing opens the door into the hallway with you, and the first thing you hear is this piercing scream. Now, 1997, Gary, I didn't know what the hell to do. You just went, oh my God. And the thing can jump like 10 feet straight up in the air. And if he comes down, you're in trouble. You're going from fine health, which is the best, down to danger, which is the worst. Or you're straight dead. The hunter is a magnificent enemy, and it's become a staple in the series. It's a half amphibian, half human hybrid, and it's all bad.
Yeah. And think if an alligator got its face crushed to like a tenth of its size and grew some massive claws and could jump, like 10 feet straight in the air. Like something like that.
They are super fast, and like they have this clicking sound that no one's around the corner. It adds such tension because you ran through the mansion. I can deal with zombies. This is no problem. This isn't going to be an issue. And then these things show up, and they're all over the mansion. Woo! Gets the heart racing.
And then at the absolute very end, you have one of the biggest staples of every Resident Evil game, the Tyrant. Now, the Tyrant was the culmination of the strange experiments from the Umbrella Corporation in the lab under this Arclay mansion. And the Tyrant, even though I think it wasn't finished, according to the story of the game, but still, even though its heart was exposed, it had no lips, it had only one of its claws was fully formed. That thing could wreck you in one swipe. It was like double your height, double your size, and the claws on it were like about 5 feet long on its right arm, and it could just charge you and swipe you, and you were dead. So
the first encounter with it is there are 2 encounters in the game that you get to have with if you do everything correctly in the game. But the first encounter with the tyrant is, to me, undoubtedly harder. You're in a room that's a square, and there's not much room to get around the thing, so you're constantly running, but he's fast, and his reach is incredible. So I always think I've got, he's not that close to me.
Oh, he's on me!
And devastating attacks. He's got a swipe that looks like a Mortal Kombat uppercut. He's got a stab move. If he hits you with that, you're dead. If it rips through your torso, he picks you up and then he just tosses you like a rag doll. Insane. The tension in that scene, just the horror. It was crazy at the time. I know what to expect now. But I remember the first time I'm playing it, going, "How the hell do I beat this thing? There's no way."
Though thankfully, the second time you fight him on the top of a helipad while you're waiting to actually get out of this mansion before its self-destruct sequence ends, you thankfully get one of the other staples of every Resident Evil game ending, the rocket launcher.
But before that, you have to... Now, like I said, I'm being very, very honest, Daniel. I played through both campaigns to prepare for this episode. In Chris's campaign, I saved both Rebecca and Jill, and I got to fight the tyrant. In Jill's, I got Barry killed.
Ooh.
And you can't fight the tyrant if you get Barry killed. So I didn't... The second time, you can't fight the tyrant. So I unleashed the tyrant upon an unsuspecting world, and I got Barry killed.
Good job. Congratulations.
What is this?
I hope that's not Barry's blood.
It was.
Ooh.
You're fighting the tyrant on the helipad. You get the rocket launcher because the helicopter you send out a flare. Your helicopter comes, and the guy who ran away in the first place, named Brad Vickers, tosses you a rocket launcher. What's that like, Daniel? What's it like to feel the power over your shoulder?
I can't think of many things in the world more satisfying than looking at the tyrant, the thing that harassed the hell out of you and probably killed you several times, forcing you to, restart. Finally shooting him with a rocket and turning him into giblets.
He bursts into like 4 pieces. It's so satisfying.
And then basically, that's the end. You escape the mansion, it blows up, and, well, not everyone from Stars made it out, but at least you did.
And depending how well you did, some of your friends could come too. I like in Chris's campaign especially. You fight the tyrant the first time, you think you've killed him. Wesker the traitor is dead. And Rebecca stops you in the hallway and goes, "Chris, we should blow this motherfucker up." And Chris going and being the best cop that he is, he goes, "That's a great idea." So they set off the self-destruct system, and that's why the mansion ends up blowing up. It just struck me as so funny. You got these 2 special tactical and rescue squad officers, and they're like, "Let's blow this smithereens."
It's like Vin Diesel said in Triple X, stop thinking Proud Police and start thinking PlayStation. Blow shit up.
That's the storyline and the gameplay. Daniel, it's time for your final verdict.
Final verdict, skunky or fresh?
This, for those of you out there who are also Resident Evil fans, this might come as a shock, possibly even blasphemy. But the original Resident Evil, I'm going to say skunky. It does not hold up, and I would not recommend you play it.
Listen, we're all adults now. Time is at a definite premium. And if I'm going to recommend a game to someone, there can be no better alternative. So the original Resident Evil, I'm going to agree with you, Daniel. The original Resident Evil has gone skunky. It's been left in its bottle in the sun too long.
Yep.
If you're going to recommend a Resident Evil game for people to start with, it's going to have to be the remaster. It's got more gameplay, more replayability, and the original's just not canon anymore, so there's no reason to play it.
Or if you are dead set on experiencing the original, go with Deadly Silence. If you have a DS, I would absolutely recommend that instead. There are quality of life improvements in there and little quirks that I appreciate.
So there you have it, folks. 2-0, unanimous decision. The original Resident Evil for the PlayStation. Skunky.
Not to say it's bad, not to say we didn't like it at its time, but these days, there are better alternatives.
So that wraps up this inaugural edition of Pint Glass Gaming. Thanks for listening. Please don't forget to check us out on Instagram and YouTube. In our next Pint Glass Gaming video on YouTube, I'm going to be trying to do the impossible, Daniel.
What? Divide by 0?
Just as likely to divide by 0 is to make a defense for the Philips CDI.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
We thank you for listening, and we hope to see you next time.
No, really, what the fuck is wrong with you? I mean, how could you possibly defend the CDI? I mean, it's such a terrible...